Back with me are Michael Beschloss, Paul Butler, Aaron Haynes, and David Jolly. Before we move on, we mentioned Rudy. Paul, I want to ask you about this bankruptcy. Can he wriggle out of it? I just want to put up what he owes. He owes the IRS $202,000. He owes and $521,000 for another judgment. He owes the New York Department of Taxes and Finance. He owes his lawyers that he didn't pay. And then there's a long list of people that he also owes, including Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss, $148 million. Which of those things can he delay through bankruptcy?
So good news and bad news. The good news is this will force some transparency. Giuliani's been really shady, including in this trial, about where his money is. That's one reason the judge ordered him to pay up now. If he lies about his assets, where they are in a bankruptcy court, that's a crime. He's going to jail. The bad news is it's going to take longer for Ms. Moss and Ms. Freeman to get paid. But Rudy's bankruptcy doesn't discharge his debt to them. There's an exception for intentional torts like defamation. So Freeman and Moss should get paid at some point. It's just a question of when, but they'll be near the front of the line. And make no mistake, Rudy is not broke. He's got an apartment in New York. He's got a condo in Florida, and he's got money in the bank. And so at some point, if this $148 million verdict survives appeal, Rudy Giuliani is going to be working for Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss for the rest of his natural life.
God is good. Won't he do it?
Love the idea.
Won't he do it? Okay, let's talk about Joe Biden. Let me play. This is a group of Dane County, Wisconsin young voters. It was a critical state in 2024 for Joe Biden. Here are some young voters. The great Shaq Brewster interviewed them. Take a look.
Is funding this war. I don't know what will happen if I don't vote for him, but I know it won't be me supporting that.
On climate, on COVID responses, you could tell his administration were doing really great work. But I think after October 7th, the question became a matter of human rights.
What's the best argument that you have for young voters to support Joe Biden?
The other guy is way worse.
It's that simple.
I think it is.
So, Aaron, this is a challenge for Joe Biden. And you saw the first person there, the young person, Gaza. I mean, we have seen just utter, absolute carnage. It is very difficult to watch and stomach every day, just covering it from here. But young voters are particularly angry about it. And then there's other things like climate change and other things they see as unmet promises. This is a problem, no, for the Biden administration. And I'm wondering how seriously they are taking it.
I think you are seeing that it may be beginning to sink in. For them, we still are, almost a year out from this election. And so there is still time to make the case to these voters. And I think that you are seeing in the way that the president and vice president are getting out on the campaign trail and really taking this message to people and trying to hammer this home early and not kind of in the 11th hour shows that maybe they are not necessarily taking for granted these key coalitions that they need to shore up, particularly young voters who, are not necessarily going to vote for Trump, but need to be persuaded to come back out for them. I mean, I actually just wrote about this issue recently in my column for the 19th, the amendment, to say, that Democrats are going to have to make the case. They're going to have to make the case early, and they can't assume that these people are just going to show up. Young voters, women, people of color, immigrants, particularly given that there is a lot of unfinished work on the agenda that they pitched to them in 2020, that they're wanting to see that work completed, but also need to be convinced that this is the team that can get that done.
Yeah, and David, I think it should scare every Democrat that Joe Biden seems to have put his political fate in the hands of one Bibi Netanyahu, who is an autocrat wannabe, who stole control, wrestled control of the Supreme Court in his country and has passed some very anti-democratic, small d, laws in his country, and who seems quite clear that what he wants to do is just mow Gaza into the earth. And that is now the person upon whom Joe Biden's fate might rest with some young voters.
Yeah, look, I think Joe Biden has a lot of challenges ahead of him in terms of what issues he decides to strongly address and run on. You could make the case, I believe, very credibly, that the continuation of our democracy, of our democratic republic, is actually the most important issue on the ballot. But it's not actually the number one issue with voters. If you really look at polling and examine what they're most concerned about, you can take this issue of Israel and Gaza and recognize that Joe Biden has significant challenges. But is that the number one issue that's informing voters? Maybe for some younger voters, yes, but largely not for others. So how do you package all that together? And I think there is a way that it can all come together. I mean, the truth is, we know that Donald Trump, he, in his own words, is running for retribution, and he wants to undo our democratic republic. But I think what Joe Biden has the opportunity to say is, my administration is trying to advance an economy for all people, healthcare access for all people, education for all people, voting rights, protecting your own suffrage, equity and equality for all people, jobs, industry. We are doing all these things, but you can only be the beneficiary of those things if democracy is protected. And so we also have to do that. Because in a Donald Trump administration, winners and losers are based on political loyalty and whomever the chief executive decides is the winner that day. I think there's a way to do this, but Joe Biden has to focus on what voters are asking for, which is his priorities around growing an economy that represents their long-term interests. I think the economy is ultimately what's going to inform voters. The other issues are important, second, third, fourth issues, but the economy is going to drive voters, I believe, in November.
You know, we love having an historian at the table because I think about Nixon, right? Nixon was like the youth candidate, right? Like he sort of positioned himself as the peace candidate in some ways.
Which was a lie.
Which was a complete lie. And so is Donald Trump not the peace candidate. Like, I mean, right now, I'm hearing a lot of people talking about this, you know, to protect this coalition of European countries to protect the Red Sea. A lot of people are calling that pre-World War III. Right. People are now looking at Donald Trump and saying, well, during his administration, there weren't all these wars. And you're starting to hear that same kind of Nixonian recasting this madman as potentially the peace candidate. Joe Biden is in this odd position where he's reliving in some ways LBJ's life.
He is, but at the same time, I think he knows, I pray he knows, that I disagree a little bit with David, whom I respect so much. The economy is going to be extremely important, but ultimately this election has to be decided. You know, do you voters want to live under a democracy or do you want to live under a dictatorship that's going to take away your rights? It's going to deport some of you out of this country in ways that we have never seen before and had a right never to expect. That's what's at stake. And so if Joe Biden is able to make sure that that's the real issue, I don't have any problem with thinking that a serious majority of the American people do not want fascism. They don't want to lose those rights. If he fails to make that point, I think the country has a real problem.
And the question becomes, you know, the get out of fascism free card really is the 6 members, the conservatives on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And, you know, it is, and I'm not saying what I think, I'm telling you what I know. Yes. Most Republicans despise Donald Trump. Let's just be honest. Sure. They'll tell you behind the scenes.
They'd love to get rid of him.
They want him gone, but they don't want their fingerprints on it. They want someone else to do it. They're too afraid to do it themselves. Here is the 6-member majority, including John Roberts, who is the ultimate politician and a Republican politician, in my view.
And an enemy of voting rights.
And an enemy, I mean, an absolute enemy of voting rights, an absolute enemy of the individual rights of wealthy white men and non-corporations. However, as a Republican, he could do the deed and get rid of Donald Trump for his Republican friends. In your view, does he do it?
So a subtext of the brief that Jack Smith filed in court today, asking the Supreme Court to please expedite their decision, is that the trial needs to happen before the election.
And this would be the Jack Smith, right, the Jack Smith trial on overturning the election, the coup trial.
Yes, that's right, the federal trial, because it's information that the voters should have. So Jack Smith makes a big deal about how this is a historic first ever federal prosecution of a former president. Another subtext, though, is if Trump doesn't have the trial before the election and he wins, then he will either pardon himself or appoint an attorney general who will dismiss the case.
And that would be the end of democracy because then he would essentially be a king.
Oh, absolutely. And he's already talked about it. You know, you'd think that if someone was going to do something as controversial as that, they'd be a little quiet and then roll in the tanks after the inauguration.
Yeah, but no.
So if he has been this far in saying, I will abuse the military to fire against citizens, essentially, you know, I will undermine the rule of law and appoint an attorney general who is my lapdog, I will undermine, he doesn't put it in this language, rights in a way that Americans have never seen before in our entire almost 250-year history, this is something that, if this is not the deciding issue in the next election, Americans have got an existential problem.